The interpretation of dreams. Sigmund Freud. In 1899, a doctor in Vienna sat down and wrote a book almost nobody bought. The first printing was 600 copies. It took 8 years to sell out. That book would go on to reshape psychology, psychiatry, art, literature, and the way ordinary people talk about their own minds. To the point where terms like Freudian slip, wish fulfillment, and subconscious, a word Freud himself disliked, by the way, he preferred unconscious, are now just part of everyday language. The book is The Interpretation of Dreams. And today, we're breaking down what's actually in it, not the pop culture cartoon version, but the real argument, the real case studies, and why it still matters, and where it completely falls apart. Section 1. The problem Freud was trying to solve. Before Freud, there were basically 2 ways people explained dreams. 1. Dreams are prophetic or divine, ancient and religious traditions, messages from gods, omens, warnings. 2. And this was the dominant scientific view in Freud's own time. Dreams are meaningless noise, random neural firing during sleep, maybe triggered by a full bladder, an upset stomach, a noise in the next room. Interesting biologically, but not about anything. Freud rejected both. His claim was radical for a scientist to make. Dreams are meaningful psychological texts. Every element, no matter how absurd, random, or embarrassing, can, in principle, be traced back to a cause in the dreamer's own mind. And not just any cause, specifically, a wish. That's the whole book in one sentence. Every dream is the disguised fulfillment of a wish. The rest of the book is Freud spending 600 pages proving that sentence, and then explaining exactly how the disguise works. Section 2. The founding case. The dream of Irma's injection. Freud doesn't lead with someone else's dream. He leads with his own, because he trusted his own associations more than a patient's, and honestly, because he needed proof of concept before he'd ask anyone else to buy in. The dream. Freud is at a party. He runs into a patient he calls Irma. She tells him she's still in pain. He looks in her throat and sees strange white patches. Other doctors, colleagues, rivals, show up and start arguing over the diagnosis. It comes out that another colleague, Otto, gave Irma an injection with an unclean syringe. That's what caused the problem, not Freud's treatment. Instead of reading this dream like a fortune cookie, Freud does something new. He takes it apart, piece by piece. The party, Irma, the throat, the syringe, a weird phrase that popped into his head, trimethylamine. For each fragment, he asks, what does this actually remind me of? Follow the thread far enough, and it leads to real anxieties from his medical practice. Guilt over a patient whose treatment hadn't fully worked, professional rivalry with colleagues, and underneath all of it, one very human wish. It's not my fault. The dream didn't just randomly generate that scenario. It built a scene where the blame lands squarely on someone else. Wish granted, in disguise. Freud calls this the first fully interpreted dream in history, and it becomes his proof of method. Don't read the dream as a whole. Break it into pieces. Free associate to each piece. Trust where it leads, even into embarrassing territory. Section 3. Manifest versus latent. Why dreams need a censor. Here's the problem Freud runs into almost immediately. Most dreams don't look like clean wish fulfillments. Nobody's dreaming, I get the promotion I wanted, in a straightforward way most nights. Dreams are weird, disjointed, sometimes disturbing. Freud's answer, there are 2 layers to every dream. The manifest content, what you actually remember when you wake up. The weird surface story. The latent content, the real underlying wish. Usually something the conscious mind would find unacceptable, embarrassing, or threatening. Often something aggressive, sexual, or rooted in childhood. Between those 2 layers sits something Freud calls the censor. a kind of internal gatekeeper that won't let the raw, unfiltered wish through to consciousness. So, the mind disguises it, scrambles it, displaces it onto safer imagery. That scrambling process is what Freud calls the dream work. And it's the real technical engine of the whole book. Section 4, the dream work. How the disguise actually works. This is the part of the book that's genuinely clever, regardless of what you think of the theory overall. Freud identifies specific mechanisms: condensation. Multiple ideas or people get compressed into a single dream image. A character in your dream might be a fusion of 3 real people, sharing a name from one, a face from another, a job from a third. This is why dream interpretation always produces more material than the dream itself. The dream is a compressed file, and interpretation unpacks it. Displacement. The emotional weight gets shifted off the thing that's actually important, and onto something trivial. This is the mechanism that explains why you might wake up disturbed by a completely mundane detail in a dream, while the objectively dramatic part barely registered. The censor moved the charge somewhere safer. Means of representation. Abstract ideas, causation, contradiction, negation don't have a natural picture, so the dream work converts them. Cause and effect become 2 scenes back to back. Contradictions get fused into one impossible image. Either /or often collapses into and, meaning both options in a dream may secretly both be true in the underlying thought. Secondary revision. After all that scrambling, the mind does one more pass, smoothing the dream into something that feels like a coherent story. This is the layer responsible for the false sense that a dream makes sense as a narrative, when really that narrative is the most artificial, least meaningful part of the whole thing. And then there's symbolism. The idea that certain objects, staircases, boxes, umbrellas, kings and queens, tend to represent the same things across different dreamers, often sexual anatomy or parental figures. This is the part of the book people know best from pop culture, and also the part that's most scientifically shaky. More on that in a minute. Section 5. The greatest hits. Typical dreams. Freud noticed some dreams recur across almost everyone, with very little variation, which suggested to him something universal in human psychology, not just personal quirks. Being naked in public while everyone else seems weirdly unbothered. Freud ties this to childhood, before shame was learned, and reads the crowd's indifference as part of the wish itself. Dreaming a loved one has died, and grieving hard in the dream. Freud's most controversial claim here is that this can stem from ordinary childhood rivalry or resentment toward that person, long buried, resurfacing in disguise. He's careful to note this isn't about conscious hatred. Failing an exam you actually passed years ago, read as a reassurance dream, borrowing a past success to soothe present-day anxiety. Falling, flying, teeth falling out, tied to early bodily sensations, and, in Freud's more speculative moments, to anxiety about loss or sexuality. Section 6. The Big Picture. What this book actually built in the final chapter, Freud stops talking about dreams specifically and sketches something much bigger, a working model of the mind itself. He proposes that mental energy normally flows forward, from perception toward action and thought. In dreaming, it runs backward, turning thoughts into vivid hallucinated images. That's why a dream feels like you're seeing something, not just thinking it. He also sketches distinct systems within the mind, one unconscious, driven by these weird rules of condensation and displacement, with no real regard for logic, contradiction, or time, and one conscious/preconscious, which is orderly and logical, with a censorship mechanism sitting between them, and he frames the dream itself as the guardian of sleep. The disguising process exists specifically, so disturbing wishes can discharge just enough to keep you asleep, instead of jolting you awake. This is, in miniature, the entire architecture Freud would spend the rest of his career building out. Repression, the unconscious, eventually the ED, ego, and superego. This book isn't really about dreams. Dreams are the entry point into a theory of the whole mind. Section 7. Where it holds up and where it doesn't. Here's the honest part. What holds up? Freud was right that dreams aren't meaningless static, and that the mind does things like condense, displace, and disguise material. Even cognitive scientists who reject psychoanalysis broadly will grant that dreams draw on real memories and emotional concerns in non-obvious ways. His method: take the dream apart, follow associations, don't force a dictionary reading onto it, is a genuinely useful way to think about your own mind, whatever its scientific status. What doesn't hold up? The central claim that every dream is a wish fulfillment, including nightmares and anxiety dreams, is structured so that it can't really be proven wrong. If a dream looks like wish fulfillment, Freud takes that as confirmation. If it looks like the opposite, he explains that as a disguised wish fulfillment. That's a problem for anyone trying to test the theory scientifically. The fixed symbol stuff, a specific object always meaning a specific thing, sits awkwardly next to his own insistence that dreams have to be interpreted individually through personal association. Those two methods can point in completely different directions for the same dream, and Freud doesn't fully resolve the tension. And modern sleep science tells a very different, more physiological story about why we dream, tied to memory consolidation and neural activity during REM sleep, not primarily to repressed wishes. Closing. So, is the interpretation of dreams true in the way a scientific theory needs to be? Mostly, no, not by modern standards. Is it one of the most important, influential books of the last 150 years? Absolutely. It gave us a vocabulary for the idea that we don't fully know our own minds, that the past shapes the present in ways we can't directly see, and that even our strangest, most private mental material might be worth taking seriously instead of dismissing as noise. That's the real legacy. Less of finished science, more a permanent shift in how we think about thinking. If you want the deep dive on any single piece of this, the dream work mechanisms, the sexual symbolism controversy, or how this book led directly to Freud's later ID, ego-superego model, let me know in the comments, and I'll cover it in a follow-up.